Today, we are diving deep into a really fascinating new study. It pits artificial intelligence against one of the biggest challenges in all of medicine, cancer treatment. And we're not just looking at one AI. Nope, we're looking at several different types of AI to see which one, if any, comes out on top in a super high-stakes medical challenge.
So, let's just start with a question that honestly sounds like it's straight out of science fiction, but it's getting closer to reality literally every day. What if an AI actually knew more about cancer than your own doctor? It's a wild thought, and it's right at the heart of the research we're going to break down. But to even understand why we're asking that question, we first have to get a handle on the incredible pressure that cancer specialists are under. The researchers call this the doctor's dilemma. Okay, I want you to imagine trying to drink from a fire hose. Seriously, that's pretty much what it's like for oncologists right now. The speed of new research, updated guidelines, and breakthrough therapies, it is just relentless. It's a huge challenge for even the most brilliant doctors to stay on top of absolutely everything.
And look, this isn't just about reading a few extra articles. We're talking about entirely new kinds of drugs popping up, guidelines that are constantly shifting, and they can even be different depending on where you live. Plus, there's a projected global shortage of these specialists. It all adds up to this growing gap between what's theoretically the best care and what a single doctor can realistically deliver on any given day.
So the big question is, could AI be the answer to this information overload? Well, researchers decided to put it to the test, but what they found is that not all AI is built the same. So let's meet the contenders.
First up, we've got the kind of AI that most of us are familiar with, right? The general-purpose large language model. Think of things like OpenAI's o1 or Google's Gemini. They basically take a question and answer it based on the giant pile of data they were trained on. It's kind of like having a super intelligent expert who can only answer from what they can remember.
Okay, our next contender is a step up. It's a system that uses something called retrieval augmented generation, or RAG for short. Now, this AI doesn't just rely on its memory. Before it gives you an answer, it actually goes and looks up information from an external, up-to-date source. The system they looked at, Milo, is like giving that brilliant expert access to a massive, specialized medical library.
And then we have our final contender, the most advanced of the bunch, an agentic workflow system they called Hope AI. This AI, it goes even further. It doesn't just look things up. It uses a bunch of different tools and a multi-step reasoning process to analyze and synthesize all that information. Think of it less like a librarian and more like a whole research assistant who can manage a complex project from beginning to end.
All right, so to recap it real quick, we've got the generalist, which is like answering from memory. We've got the librarian, which looks things up in an encyclopedia, and we have the research assistant, which basically writes a whole research paper to find the answer. 3 totally different ways of tackling the same problem. Now, how in the world do you fairly test which of these AIs is actually the best at giving cancer advice? Well, the researchers came up with this really intense and fascinating stress test to find out.
And they were super meticulous about this. First, they created 50 complex real-world patient scenarios. Then, they had each of the AIs generate a treatment recommendation. But here's the crucial part. They blinded the whole evaluation. They stripped out all the names, standardized the formatting, so the judges had no idea which AI wrote what. Finally, they brought in a panel of 3 expert oncologists to grade every single response.
So the stage was set. The test was run. The experts submitted their scores. And, well, it's time to see the results.
First up, accuracy. And right out of the gate, the results are pretty striking. The research assistant, Hope AI, gave responses that the experts considered accurate over 80% of the time. That is a huge lead over the other models, which were both kind of hovering around 60%.
Okay, but what about being up to date? In a field that moves this fast, that is absolutely critical. And here again, the agentic Hope AI just pulled way ahead. 85% of its answers were rated as relevant and current. The others, they barely cleared 50%. This really shows you the advantage of a system that's designed to go out and find the latest data.
Finally, how comprehensive were the answers? And this is where the gap becomes a total blowout. Hope AI gave what doctors considered a complete picture almost 75% of the time. That's more than double its competitors. It wasn't just right, it was thorough.
So, when the human judges were asked to just rank all the blinded responses from best to worst, who did they actually prefer? Yeah, it wasn't even close. Hope AI was ranked number 1 in 2/3 of every single evaluation. It was the clear, undisputed winner of this AI gauntlet.
So, the agentic workflow AI wins. It's more accurate, more relevant, more comprehensive. Case closed, right?
The story's over? Well, this is where things take a really crucial turn. It's time for a reality check. After seeing those incredible scores, you have to ask the ultimate question, right? Is this winning AI ready to be used in a clinic tomorrow? Is it ready to actually advise your doctor on your care? The researchers actually measured this directly. They scored every single response on a very simple metric. Is this ready for clinical use? For the winning AI, Hope AI, that number was just 25.3%. Yep, even the best system was only considered ready to go, without any edits, about a quarter of the time.
So what on earth went wrong? How could the winners still fall so short? Well, the notes from the expert judges are pretty revealing. Even the best AI made some really critical errors. It sometimes recommended drugs that aren't even on the market anymore, or suggested a treatment for the completely wrong stage of a disease. In other cases, it totally missed brand new relevant therapies, or just couldn't grasp the complex step-by-step sequencing of patient care.
And this all leads us to the study's main takeaway. And honestly, this is the most important part. The researchers concluded that these incredible AI tools should be treated as decision support, not as directives. The key point is that their answers absolutely must be reviewed by a qualified doctor before they're ever used in the real world. Think of it as a co-pilot, not the pilot.
And that leaves us with this final massive thought. This study shows us that AIs are getting unbelievably good at processing information, just massive amounts of it. But the real challenge, the gap that still exists, is being able to replicate the complex, nuanced clinical reasoning of an experienced doctor. It's the difference between knowing all the facts and knowing what to do with them. And bridging that gap, well, that's the next great frontier for AI in medicine.